This podcast may contain explicit language. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
We also welcome our returning celebrity guest, 5-time club member, sister, daughter, making her 6th appearance on the show to date. It's Allyson Techmeier.
Hi.
Hello. It's been roughly almost 2 years since you've been on. I think the last time that you were on the show
Mary Poppins.
No.
Was I on after that?
You were, but that's like 3 years ago.
No, Mary Poppins was 2 years ago.
It was not.
Okay. What was the
Your
next
last
one?
appearance was on the Casablanca revisit in either like late July or early August of 2023.
Okay, yeah.
So, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy?
Well, working, attending grad school, and just keeping busy with life. I mean, a lot going on.
Fair enough. All right. For tonight, for our 254th episode, we discuss Toy Story from 1995. Directed by John Lasseter, written by Joss Whedon, Andrew Stanton, Joel Cohen, and Alex Sokolow. Music by Randy Newman, starring Tom Hanks as Woody, Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear, Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head, Jim Varney as Slinky Dog, Wallace Shawn as Rex, John Ratzenberger as Ham, Annie Potts as Bo Peep, John Morris as Andy Davis, Eric Von Detten as Sid Phillips, Laurie Metcalf as Mrs. Davis, R. Lee Ermey as Sergeant, Jeff Pigeon as Aliens, Sarah Freeman as Hannah Phillips, Penn Jillette as the Buzz Lightyear TV commercial announcer, and Mickey McGowan as Mrs. Phillips. Background for the movie: Toy Story was wide released on November 22nd, 1995. On a budget of $30 million, the film would be a surprise sensation, grossing $394 million worldwide and placing second at the worldwide box office for 1995. Critics loved the film, with many highlighting the new animation technology, the casting, and the story among their reviews. Toy Story would be nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Original Screenplay, the first animated film ever to be nominated in that category, Original Song for You've Got a Friend in Me, and Original Score by Randy Newman. While the Best Animated Feature category would not be created for several years, the film did receive a Special Achievement Oscar for its work with digital animation. Toy Story also sold very well in home video sales and in merchandising. To Infinity and Beyond has become a very well-known phrase the world over, as well as the film inspiring 3 different released sequels and an upcoming 4th in the near future. Digital animation has become the dominant form of animation since Toy Story's release, with Pixar in particular going on to massive film success with many of its other films. In 2005, Toy Story was selected by the United States Library of Congress to be preserved in the National Film Registry. Toy Story currently holds a 100% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 96 score on Metacritic, and a 4.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So as we begin each week, Dad, what is your relationship to this film?
We took at least 1, if not 2, little children to the movie theater to see this.
So you took me, you took Allison. We were at my aunt's house because it was cookie baking.
Ah, yes.
And we went with my cousins to see it. So I do very distinctly remember, I'm pretty sure that...
No cousins had been born at this time.
I suppose you're right. Maybe that was...
The first cousin was born in January of 96.
Yeah, you're right. And Sarah wouldn't have been around yet. I don't know. I swear I remember seeing this in theaters with at least Uncle Steve.
I thought that Mom and I took the 2 of you. That we did.
It's 2.5, so I have no input on that part of it.
I know it was one of the Toy Stories, so maybe it was Toy Story 2, but which we'll be discussing later this year, I should add.
Toy Story 2 is the better one. I do like Toy Story, but Toy Story 2 is the better.
It's not, but okay, so Toy Story 2 also came out over Thanksgiving, so I think I'm recalling Toy Story 2. But I do remember seeing this in theaters. I guess I don't remember all the circumstances. Forgive me, I was 5.
Okay. Forgive me, I'm old.
That's true. No objection here. So, Allyson, do you recall watching this at all?
Not until I was older. I know we had the VHS tape, and I don't remember the first time I ever watched it, but I remember watching it a lot as a kid. It was one of our favorite VHSs. I'm wondering if it's one that Mom kept, because Mom kept all of the ones we watched a lot and got rid of all the other ones. So, but I do remember watching it a lot. It was a good movie, and so it was an easy one for us to just pop in the player, and all of us enjoyed watching it.
There are very few things that I remember very early on in my life, but this happens to be one of them. And I think, oddly enough, all of my earliest memories surround films for some reason. Watching Peter Pan, watching my D2 Mighty Ducks tape get eaten by Grandma and Grandpa's VCR when they moved to Forest Lake, Minnesota, watching Lion King in the theater for somebody's birthday party, and a discussion in our old house at Mauston for some reason over Dumb and Dumber. Don't ask me why those are like the 4 things that I really remember, but they're all somehow surrounding that. I guess film has always been part of my life.
Yeah.
So, since this film has been around, our family for a long time, and we all roughly probably saw this together. What is the film about?
Jealousy, insecurity, misplaced feelings of importance.
Yeah, I think those are all accurate. I think there's a bit of an imposter syndrome, inadequacy, that's part of the film. The changing nature or shifting relationships through life as new people come in. I mean, the entire film, the plot revolves around when a newest toy is being introduced into the group. And every time there's a new toy, there's the potential for upheaval among the community.
Kind of like when new children are added.
Yes, and other children are shifted to the basement.
Because we no longer love them.
That was true. Anyway, moving on. So obviously Toy Story is a significant film in the history of animation, but why is it a significant marker in the history of animation?
Well, animation had kind of hit a stone wall for a while, and then it came back, and then it kind of did okay, and then it didn't. And I mean, it just kind of seemed like a constant yin and yang. And it was right during this whole period that, you know, you had the run of Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King, Toy Story, and it kind of reclaimed a position of significance. And at the same time, those films took a swath into adult culture as well. It was films that were enjoyable for both the children and the parents to watch together. Not to mention that this was a computer-generated animation film.
Yeah, my most notable thing about this would be the digital animation sphere. The reason that it got a Special Achievement Award is for its work in the digital animation space, which has become the predominant form by which anything is animated anymore. Obviously, you still have your like Studio Ghibli type situations that are not doing it in a digital space, but it's taking something that in some ways is a 2D animation space. Up till that point, that's for the most part what we've gotten, is the cell kind of animation work, where everything is really hand-drawn, and then they're doing it, basically taking photographs and stringing it all together, much in the same way that we had claymation is done in that way. You're taking individual photographs and then running them together to create a film. In this, you're creating more of a 3D characteristic rendering of an environment. And while Toy Story is dated in its animation, it still, for the most part, looks okay because they figured out at least the majority of the movie can be based around things that we know the animation can keep up with. If you look at the people in early Pixar movies versus the people in Pixar movies later, you can see a very discernible difference over how they're animated. But by this point, the digital animation hadn't caught up yet to be able to render them appropriately. So instead, they chose toys where they could feature specific assets. The eyes were bigger, the noses were more sharp. So Andy doesn't look great, but Buzz Lightyear does. And Buzz Lightyear has not changed as an animated figure in the 25 years or 20 years since we've known him.
Yes, he did when they made the new Buzz Lightyear movie. He was completely different and it was very offensive. Completely and totally changed him.
Because that was a completely different thing.
Doesn't matter. They changed Buzz Lightyear.
To do a completely different story that had nothing to do with Toy Story.
It did because Buzz Lightyear came from Toy Story.
Or Buzz Lightyear came from Star Command.
Anyway, your comment was wrong though. They did change Buzz Lightyear.
Okay, well they haven't changed Woody.
Okay, good. They shouldn't change him.
Although he technically retired at the end of 4, but he's somehow coming back for 5.
I hope so. You can't have Toy Story without Buzz and Woody. Like, I just don't think that would be the same.
Except that you kind of need to move the story along. And at a certain point, yes, while those two are the main figures, you kind of need to center it around new people in order to have the story.
Yeah, but they didn't introduce two new main characters. They've got Forky, but Forky cannot be a main character in the next...
Well, there's a reason why 4 is the least... And we're not covering 4 this season, unlike we're covering 2 and we're covering 3.
Anyway, so I was reading earlier that the reason Pixar chose Toy Story as its first project was because of the fact that it was toys that were being animated and they could try out new things and try new things without having to really get technical and detailed on other aspects. All the plastic and all the, they could make it look a certain way and they could try things. So that's why they chose Toy Story as their first project.
When they're rendering the toys, I think it looks really good. Even the background in Andy's room, where it's still exaggerated line drawing and like some of the furniture isn't as crisp, but it's decent enough. That's the parts of the movie that still work. But the wider animation universe, when they have to go to the gas station and they do a wide shot of like the vehicles, that doesn't look as good as some later stuff that they do. But is there anything else in how Toy Story is a significant marker on the history of animation, especially over the last 30 years?
Well, I think it launched Pixar. I mean, that's a huge corporation and a huge company that's made countless movies that everyone just loves today. And I think that's a big thing, that it created a whole brand.
I would say the other legacy that they have is they became so successful and so synonymous with Disney that Disney had to change its entire animation studio to be more like Pixar. And so Frozen looks a lot like a Pixar movie, even though it's Disney. Tangled looks a lot more like Pixar, even though it's Disney. So we're not getting Mulan or Tarzan anymore. We're getting Brave.
Yeah, but I mean, you can tell still the stories that are different. I like Pixar because it gives more of the inanimate object side. I think that's what Toy Story was. It was launching that. It's like, because after that it was like a Bug's Life and Cars. And so it's more like the inanimate and where they can play more with the animation compared to regular Disney where it's more people focused. So like, even when you're watching those movies you reference, like you can still tell that's Disney compared to Pixar.
I think that only holds up so long because you're still talking about, well, I guess Inside Out might be an exception to some of that, but Soul?
Yeah, but the animation looks completely different in that still. It's more of a play on things than it is like what you'd expect from a typical Disney movie. Pixar gets to have that more fun, and Pixar gets to create its own animation. Compared to where Disney, you have set standards and expectations already laid out. Like, when you watch a princess movie, what to expect. Whereas Pixar has a huge open door where you can create people that don't look like people but are still people, and like you can create this whole universe within that realm and giving it other characteristics.
Well, be it from me to argue with a school teacher over animated films, much of which I haven't kept up with over the last 15 years.
Just an observation, I mean, having worked with kids of all different ages, it's just Pixar tends to also bridge many more age gaps. Like Pixar, you're going to have more people who are interested in watching things from Pixar over generations than you are going to have Disney.
Why do you think that is? Is that more playing in a universal themed sandbox, or is this more Disney doesn't know how to do the storytelling in the same way?
I think Disney, it goes back to a lot of like Frozen and Moana, and they're very much like on that, like they have the certain types of films they like to make, and that is only for a certain portion of the population. Whereas Pixar, they have things like Soul, as you were saying, and Inside Out, and they have Cars, and they have all these different films from different types of backgrounds and genres, and it opens it up to, and isn't Up also a Pixar, and Wall-E, and those are Pixar, I believe, and it opens it up to that realm of, okay, this isn't set in one type of person. Like, most adult women are not going to go watch Frozen or Moana except for the fact that they maybe watched it as a kid or whatever, but I'm still going back and I'm watching, and so are all these other people watching all these Pixars for generations to come, and it's just got some element that makes you more interested. Like on Friday, I'm doing a movie day for my high school students, and I'm more likely to put on a Pixar than I am to watch any of the Disney movies. Like if I put on a Disney, they're all just gonna be like, but if I put on Cars or Up or something, they're all gonna be engaged in watching it.
Well, are we ready to give more on the background of the movie? Dad, do you have our plot summary ready for us?
Yes. Toy Story is an animated film about a group of toys that come to life when their owner, Andy, is not around. The story centers on Woody, a cowboy doll, and Buzz Lightyear, a space ranger action figure. When Buzz arrives and threatens Woody's status as Andy's favorite toy, Woody is overcome with jealousy. However, after an accident, the two must work together after getting lost in the chaos of a move, leading to an unlikely friendship and a heartwarming adventure. The film explores themes of friendship, identity, and the changing nature of relationships as children grow up. The story is heartwarming, humorous, and full of adventure, with memorable characters and groundbreaking animation that set a new standard for animated films.
Thank you. Did you know? Sid Phillips is said to be inspired by a former Pixar employee of the same last name, who was known to disassemble toys and use the parts to build bizarre creations. Did you know? Billy Crystal was originally offered the chance to voice Buzz Lightyear, but declined. After seeing the finished film, he said the decision was the biggest mistake of his career. Upon learning this, John Lasseter telephoned Billy's house to offer him the role of Mike Wazowski in Monsters, Inc. Billy's wife answered the telephone and said, "John Lasseter wants to speak to you." Billy took the phone from his wife and said, "Yes." Did you know? The carpet in Sid's house has the same hexagonal pattern as the carpet in the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. Somebody pointed that out while we were watching it together.
Yeah, I wonder who.
It wasn't you.
I know.
Did you know? What attracted Tom Hanks to the role of Woody was the fact that during his childhood he would always wonder if his toys were alive and moved around when nobody was in his room. What attracted Tim Allen to the role of Buzz Lightyear was the fact that, before him, they offered the role to his biggest influence, Chevy Chase, who turned it down. Did you know? When Sarge looks through his binoculars to spy on guests while he and the other army men investigate the birthday party, you'll notice that Andy's friends are actually the same model of Andy, just with different skin tones, clothes, and accessories. Did you know? The toolbox on top of the milk crate that Woody is trapped in is a Binford, the same tool brand that Tim Allen uses on his television show Home Improvement. And finally, did you know the character of Andy is named for Andries Andy Van Dam, a Brown University professor and computer science and animation pioneer who taught many of the makers of this film. And with that, we will take our first break, and we will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 255th episode, we welcome our newest 5-time club member, Sarah Shea of Shea Cinema, back to discuss one of Dana's personal favorite movies and the Best Picture winner of 1970, in Patton, directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, written by Francis Ford Coppola and Edmund H. North, cinematography by Fred J. Conenkamp, music by Jerry Goldsmith, starring George C. Scott, Carl Malden, and Edward Binns. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. We left off at Best Performance. Dad, who did you have down?
I have John Lasseter and Pixar.
Okay, are you picking one or the other?
I think it's tied. They're intertwined.
See, I thought I was going out on a limb, that I'd be different by doing something bold and daring. And for the first time ever, giving it to an entire studio, and then you do that shit. Yet again. My best performer is Pixar.
Yeah.
We do not consult on these notes. I don't know. Like, do you have like some telepathy when you're putting your shit together?
No, I just sit down and I start going through and I think about it. I kind of mull it over and then I don't make a decision until I'm sitting at the computer. You saw that I was there today at 4:00, a couple hours, but 3 hours before we're recording, finalizing stuff.
As a whole, I'm not sure how much control Lasseter did or did not. I'm always kind of baffled on how do you direct an animated movie, per se. I'm not really sure how that goes, because there's no direct acting. Is it just that you're an overseer of the entire process? Kind of like a CEO of the film in that case? I'm not really sure what all entails that, which is part of the reason that I went with Pixar as a studio, because the achievement is so monumental in introducing digital animation as a concept, and a potentially successful or marketable concept for the first time, that I think it would be hard to deny that achievement by itself.
Well, having listened to various interviews like that Tom Hanks has done, where he's talking about how you do the voices, they'll show clips of things and they'll have you read it or read the lines 4, 5, 6, 10 times, different ways. The director's the one who's ultimately deciding which versions match and whether they need to redraw cells or pieces of the film to fit better and such. So that's where I went with it, figuring that he had ultimate oversight. But for the company itself, coming up with the initial parameters by which to draw it, I couldn't differentiate what was his actual hand versus what the company as a whole was doing.
Allyson, who do you have?
Well, I didn't know you could pick a whole company. I didn't know that was an option, so I just went with Tom Hanks for Woody, because I think that he made the character and the movie, and without Woody, there would be no Toy Story. You guys cheated and picked a whole company, so.
Well, I don't think it's particularly cheating, because it's our fucking show and we can do what we want.
That's fine, but you didn't notify anybody of this, so...
Well, if you'd regularly listen to the show, you'd know we do creative shit all the time with this stuff. But yes, this is a first-time thing where we gave it to the entire studio, but in my mind, it's deserving. That being said, I agree with your Tom Hanks pick, because he's my best secondary character. He is the personification of Woody. This is part of an absolutely brilliant run by Tom Hanks during the 90s. He did all of his line reading while he was working on Sleepless in Seattle and A League of Their Own, because he didn't want to do it while he was in his more dramatic roles of Philadelphia and Forrest Gump. But in subsequent film going, so you go from Sleepless in Seattle to A League of Their Own to Philadelphia to Forrest Gump. He wins 2 back-to-back Best Actors. Goes to Apollo 13, which in a lot of people's minds was the
same
favorite,
year.
Correct. Which was the front runner for Best Picture at that time, and in some people's minds on this podcast should have been the eventual winner over Braveheart. He then directs his first and I think only film to date, which is a cult classic, That Thing You Do, and goes to Saving Private Ryan and Castaway. I mean, that is a momentous run. But that being said, I think he separates himself a lot because the entirety of the story hinges on Woody. As much as the Buzz character kind of becomes the antagonist, Woody is very much the protagonist. And his story arc moves forward in a way that Buzz's doesn't quite. Buzz does change by the end of the movie, and so you could think of him as a co-protagonist. But Woody does the most changing from one thing to the next as to his acceptance of Buzz in this universe their community of toys in Andy's room.
I think the way that Tom Hanks delivers the lines are what bring Woody to life, though. It's like if somebody else was voicing it and they would have had different way of, intonation or a different way of saying things, it wouldn't have been the same. It's just the way that Tom Hanks would, the way that he would make the lines just flow when he was saying certain things just gave Woody the character.
As much as this run is still fantastic, I think Toy Story and Toy Story 2 and Saving Private Ryan, and even to an extent, Castaway, are about the point where Tom Hanks transitions from being a true leading man to being America's dad. Because he's been with most of America's kids that are now in their 20s and 30s since Toy Story.
Yeah. I can see that.
Dad, who was your best secondary?
I had Tom Hanks. So I guess on that note, I'll go to my most charismatic.
Well, we haven't gotten Allyson's secondary yet.
My secondary is just Buzz Lightyear because I think that Tim Allen did a really good job playing the dynamics of how serious he is at one point to how he has the breakdown to then how he and Woody become friends, and I think that the way that he portrayed that was interesting, and I don't know, I thought that it was fun.
I think he has the exact right tone of voice for that character. It's really hard to see Chevy Chase or anybody else really in the Buzz Lightyear. I mean, and there were a lot of people that apparently turned it down. But there are very few people that have a certain command of that deep baritone voice in the way that Tim Allen does, but also have the comedic timing to be able to pull it off. Sylvester Stallone has the deep enough voice to be able to do a Buzz Lightyear, but it's not quite in the same command style. It's not quite as clear because Stallone's always had a little bit of a speech thing going on. And I also don't think he has the comedic timing to be able to do something like that. So the way it worked out with Tim Allen as a second, third, fourth choice ended up being the right thing that should have happened. Ultimately.
And they definitely cashed in because the amount of money that Hanks and Allen have made off these films is mind-boggling.
And ultimately, that's why I went with Tim Allen as my most charismatic.
I did not pick him as my most charismatic.
Hey, we have some difference.
Yep. I had Mr. Potato Head.
Don
Rickles.
Of course you would.
Because I love Don Rickles. He's just Mr. Acerbic. And making Mr. Potato Head the gruff critic of everything just was fitting. And it just why Mr. Rickles always will be remembered as the Sultan of Charm.
What makes Mr. Potato Head such a potentially threatening toy is the mustache. That you can't trust a guy with that kind of mustache.
I almost put Potato Head, but I put him for this. If I had, I would put him for movie number 2 for that, because he has such more, attitude and spunk, and then there's Mrs. Potato Head to counteract him too. But in this one, I think Bo Peep. I mean, she's, brings that little heart, Annie Potts. She brings that little heart to it. Every time, she's the one who's, feeling for Woody, and she's trying to convince the others that he's not causing problems, and she feels for him, and she kind of brings that heart back to things a little bit. She doesn't have a big role in this, but just enough that some of the little things, I think it.
If I had an extra nomination for this, I would go Wallace Shawn as Rex. I think he has some of the funniest one-liners in this.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in quotes.
That voice.
Best scene, I have 5 nominees here. I have a new toy, which is kind of the beginning at the birthday party. Then To Infinity and Beyond, which is the introduction of Buzz as a character. Then I have Buzz realizes he's a toy, which is when he leaps off of the banister and crashes. Then I have Escaping Scud and Sid, which is 1, ringing the doorbell, which I have a nice little anecdote that I will wait on for a second here. And then when they attack Sid. And then finally catching up. So kind of the chase scene of the moving van. Did you have any others that you'd like to add?
I have Falling with Style, which is where Buzz, does the whole loop-de-loop on the thing. And then I have Buzz's Breakdown, where he's Mrs. Nesbit. And, he has the complete mental breakdown there, and he's, just loses it.
He had too much tea.
Yes.
Best scene, then, out of A New Toy, To Infinity and Beyond, Falling with Style, Buzz realizes he's a toy, Mrs. Nesbit, Escaping Scud and Sid, and Catching Up. What is the best scene?
Buzz realizes he's a toy. And it's because every child, when they're at some point in their life, comes to realize what they really are, that they're not what they thought they necessarily were. And I think that scene represents the realization that everybody has to have at some point in their life, that this is who I really am. I'd like to think I was this or that, but ultimately I have to realize what I am. And then from there, I'm now an adult and I can start working with what I have and moving forward with my life and building it.
And then you get a midlife crisis, which repeats the cycle.
I have a new toy. I often have highlighted opening scenes where there's a lot of exposition dump, but when I think that they're done really well, such as creating the tension of, is there going to be a new toy? And then using it for comedic relief with, oh, he got him bed sheets.
Who invited that kid?
Bed sheets.
But between all the tension and back and forth and different things that are part of that scene, the creativity that's part of it, the army men going on an expedition, but then pausing and then being caught in friendly fire by the mom stepping on one of them. And then they have to help the soldier to his destiny. I just...
No man left behind.
I appreciate all the creativity that went into that scene, and it doesn't feel like an exposition dump. And so that's why I have it as my best scene, because it introduces and builds this world that's much larger than you were probably ever thinking it could be.
For me, I guess my best scene was when, kind of to tie in with Dad's, when he realizes that he's a toy, but then he has that breakdown and the whole Miss Nesbit, and Woody has to try and get him to snap back into it, and he's sitting in a puddle on the floor, just having a complete meltdown. It's people can relate to that, and they're okay, he's now trying to figure out who he is and what to do, and he doesn't know how to come out of it. But having a friend or somebody there, I mean, Woody's not quite his friend yet at that point, but they are starting to build that relationship, and having that, I think that's a turning point too for their relationship, is when they both realize that they need each other in some capacity, and I think that's a key point.
Be it on a school teacher to nominate the existential crisis scene.
Okay.
Well, don't you have to deal with them every day?
I don't work with little children anymore. I deal with high schoolers, and they don't tell you when they're having an existential crisis. They just go to their phone.
I suppose times have changed in that direction.
Yes.
I was going to say, you could usually tell when most kids were in an existential crisis, but that's fine.
I mean, I know my students well enough that I can, but they're not, more often than not, kids today are just going to go to scroll on their phone or message with people rather than try to communicate.
As far as favorite scene, I'm going to go with Escaping Scud and Sid. One, again, the creativity behind all of it, that the toys would be smart enough to know exactly how to traipse around the attic, then get down into the overhang on the porch, and lower themselves down to also know that the doorbell was a clever way of distracting the dog. And as I say that, when it happened in the movie that they rang the doorbell, I know it's a great distraction for a dog because Mom's dog Max barked as well. He was just laying there on the couch like nothing happened, but the doorbell rings and woof. He is alert. It was a very fun moment. But then the creativity again, that they would break the rules and essentially cause Sid some PTSD, which I don't know if he necessarily deserved. Yes, he's exploding toys and he's being mean to toys, but he also might be the kid who eventually becomes like some genius scientist, because really what he's doing is a lot of science experiments. Are they particularly legal? Probably not, but he's still doing them. And aren't we supposed to be stoking kids' imaginations?
Yeah.
Not to that extent.
You can tell he's never been around a lot of children. Probably for a good reason.
Lesson of the film, give more kids fireworks.
And have less children with fingers.
Fingers are overrated.
Yeah, okay.
Well, okay.
Anyway, other favorite scenes.
I had the same, so...
Well, mine is very typical me, and it's the rescue, but it's because, okay, so that we know that Woody was the good guy the whole time, but the toys didn't know Woody was the good time, and I always like a good, the villain isn't a villain in the end sort of moment, you know, Snape being my favorite character of all the Harry Potter. Well, you know, anytime where the villain can come through and be the hero in the end is always, I like that. It's like, he's saving him, but I also like the creativity, and like, launching the rocket and then flying through the sky, and then Buzz realizing that he's got wings and he can fly, and he, you know, this isn't flying, this is, you know, repeating that, this is falling with style, and like then you missed the van, and like getting into the car and they're both there with Andy again, and I don't know, I just think that all those little moments all together make a good scene.
Of course, Allyson, you would pick the villain who's misunderstood, just like you always gravitated towards the backup quarterback who is misunderstood and his parents can't love him because he never plays.
No, I said his parents love him and want him to play too. Like, his mom was so proud of him. Like, no one's more proud of him than his mom when he gets to take that field again.
Well, if you were like Doug Peterson backing up Brett Favre or Matt Flynn backing up Aaron Rodgers, they got nice big paychecks for sitting on their ass and holding a clipboard.
Well, that is true. But anytime there's somebody who's left out or somebody who's misunderstood, I don't know, I just feel like they need a little something.
You are your mother's daughter, since her favorite character is Eeyore.
She never understands the irony of it.
Well, everyone else gets that one. But my favorite character in Winnie the Pooh is Piglet, because everyone just thinks he's like a little blustering scaredy cat and whatever, and he can be brave, and he saves the day several times, and he helps everyone, and he's a good friend, and he just doesn't get enough credit.
Most indelible moment, I also have escaping Scud and Sid. I think the most memorable thing about the film that I can remember from basically the 20 years since I've probably seen this was Woody and the other toys banding together to scare Sid.
I had catching up. That's what I remembered, the ending. And that's what was most poignant for me again.
I don't know, for me it's at the very end when Buzz and Woody are sitting on the bed together and they're just goofing around and they're friends. Like, that's the culmination of everything. It's these two people who didn't get along and didn't have, you know, were struggling, and now they're friends. When I think of the movie Toy Story, I always think of Buzz and Woody together. And so at the end when they're finally together, that's what makes sense to me.
Well, that looks like a good spot for our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That is the grades we've done so far for all 230 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Now, also, just as a small note, I mentioned last week on the show that I have been slowly curating several lists of letterboxed lists that are specific to these types of films. There is an animated list that this will be going under next week, but I created a new one today in honor of the episode that released this morning. That would be The Grapes of Wrath, and I created a Best Picture winners or winning films rankings, which I believe has like 29 different films on it. So you can check that out as well at our letterboxd at Gmote Podcast if you want to see any of the number of lists that are basically a small converted version of our master list, which is also available on Letterboxd, of the Grand Master Greatest Movie of All Time podcast list. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes, unfortunately. John Feinstein, 69. American Hall of Fame sports writer. Washington Post, The Sporting News. Author of A Season on the Brink. While we usually don't do writers per se, multiple books, including Season on the Brink, have been made into films or TV series. Stanley R. Jaffe, 84, American film producer. Kramer versus Kramer, Fatal Attraction, The Accused. Won the Oscar in 1980.
For Kramer versus Kramer.
Yes.
And so we remember these here fondly for their contributions to the arts with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's make the awkward transition to best funniest lines. I will take the obvious one off the table. To infinity and beyond.
There's a snake in my boot.
Woody. All right, that's enough. Look, we're all very impressed with Andy's new toy. Toy? T-O-Y. Toy. Excuse me, I think the word you're searching for is Space Ranger. The word I'm searching for, I can't say because there's preschool toys present.
Sergeant, about the second present Andy opens. It's bed sheets, Mr. Potato Head. Who invited that kid?
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity.
Oh, you gotta do the precursor to that. Woody, you are a toy! You aren't the real Buzz Lightyear, you're an action figure. You are a child's plaything!
Mr. Potato Head rearranges his facial features crazily. Mr. Potato Head. Hey, Ham, look, I'm Picasso. I don't get it. You uncultured swine. What you're looking at, ya hockey puck?
Mr. Potato Head. Hey, a laser! How come you don't have a laser, Woody? Woody. It's not a laser, it's a little light bulb that blinks. Ham. What's with Ham? Mr. Potato Head. Laser envy.
When Sid is doing surgery on his sister's toy, Buzz says, I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
Rex. What if Andy gets another dinosaur? I mean, a mean one. I don't think I could take that kind of rejection.
Woody. Hey, Buzz, you're flying. Buzz. This isn't flying, this is falling with style.
Woody. We toys see everything.
Buzz. I'm Buzz Lightyear. I come in peace. Rex. Oh, I'm so glad you're not a dinosaur.
Buzz. I need to repair my turbo boosters. Are you still using fossil fuels or have you discovered crystallic fusion? Woody. Well, let's see. We got double A's.
Woody. I think you've had enough tea for today. Let's get you out of here, Buzz.
I'm out.
I have one left. Great! Now I have guilt!
Well, the last iconic line that most people would recognize from Toy Story that I have is, the claw.
That's true. Do you have any others?
That's it.
All right. Let's move to the Stanley Rubric then. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film, roughly 5 years after it came out to today. So roughly about 2000 to today. What is the legacy of this film? We split this category 5 and 5 points between the industry and the audience at large for a total of 10 points. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first. The industry revolutionized animation, made a ton of money, gave green light to a ton of Pixar films and other animated films, and revived the genre. If it had not already been progressing that direction, this was the one that kicked it over the line. So for me, the industry is a 5. $350 million for ticket sales. Highest grossing film of the year.
That is incorrect.
The public loved it. So I have to go with a 5. So I'm at a 10.
It was not the highest grossing film of the year.
That's what I read.
Yeah, it's wrong. 7.
I thought it said it was highest grossing.
No, it is number 2. Apollo 13, 3, Batman Forever 4, Pocahontas 5.
Okay. Still.
I think this is very much the definition of a 5 on the industry side of things. However, on the audience perspective, I give it a half point down. While the characters are extremely well known, the story for the most part is well known. I think if you mention the name Toy Story, pretty much anywhere in the world, or at least in most of the countries that have film and film capability. I'm not saying if you go into the bush in Africa that they're going to know who Buzz and Woody are. But if you would probably go to small villages, maybe even in like Argentina or Japan, Thailand possibly, they're going to probably know who Buzz and Woody are. Possibly, or at least a few of the kids are going to know it. So that level of pervasion would normally lead me to say a 5. The problem is that I think each generation almost has their preferred Toy Story movie. And so for my generation, like, I think 3 is the best of the 4 Toy Story films. Allison's shaking her head because she thinks it's 2. She's just dead wrong.
You're wrong.
The second worst of them. Anyway, but everybody has their preferred Toy Story movie. They've added additional characters, and I just don't know how many kids are going back to the original comparative to some of the other Pixar offerings that are there. So because of that, I'm going to take the half step down. I'm going to go with a 4.5. I have a 9.5 overall.
I'm going to go with a 5 for its, like, founding of Pixar and for all that it created with the new animation styles and like the way that it created that whole industry. I'll probably go like a 4.8 for the audience stuff just because wait.
We're not doing 4.8s. You got 4.5 or you got a 5?
Fine, I will do 5, I guess. I don't want to decrease by a whole half point because I know that children still watch it. Like, what?
Nothing. I'm just finding it funny. Just go ahead. Continue.
What is funny?
He's more laughing at me than you.
Okay.
No, the both of you. Because you're just being the same children that when you were age watching this. The little bickering over stuff.
Well, anyway, I can't give it a full 5 though, which is why I wanted a 4.8 because like the children still do watch this a lot. Everyone still knows who it is, but like if you ask them which their favorite Pixar movies are, they're not like it's not up there anymore, and you're not going to go to the store and find as much. But I will say you go to Disney and they have a whole Pixar land, and 90% of Pixar land is Toy Story. So it's like you still got that, and it's still like a huge thing, but it's not the same level that it once was.
Pixar land?
Yeah. Within Disney World, there's a Pixar land. I have photos of me with Buzz and Woody, and like they have rides. They have the Slinky Dog ride, and they've got all sorts. It's like literally a Pixar land, but it's 90% Toy Story.
So the reason that I'm not going to allow the 4.8 comparative to the other 2 appropriations is because we end up at a 9.83 average between the 3 of us already.
4.5 then. Be all grumpy and crotchety.
That was not where I was going.
It's your show. Do what you want.
It's your score. Finish up. Are you at a 4.5 or a 5?
I will go 4.5 just because it, like I said, it's not quite
now
as
I have
popular.
to redo the math. Damn it.
And you hate math, so.
So it goes from a 9.83 to a 9.67.
Okay. We do not need to bicker anymore on this for people to hear. We are adults.
Well, as long as you stay within the coloring lines that we've given you.
What's the fun in that?
Impact and significance. This is a measure of the impact and significance of the film within the initial 5 years after it came out. So roughly 1995 to 2000, what is the impact and significance of the film? Much like the last category, we split this between 5 points for the industry and 5 points for the audience for a total of 10. Dad, you went first last time, I believe. I'll try my hand first here. I do think it is revolutionary, but it's hard to state it within the initial 5 years. Digital animation didn't take over for quite a while until well after Pixar had basically established themselves as the benchmark for the digital animation space. And I think because of their success, everybody else has followed suit, save for a few studios like Studio Ghibli that are still doing a distinct style of animation comparatively. Also, the best animated feature in some ways is created in a wake of this movie, but it's also after A Bug's Life and after DreamWorks kind of starts its own animation studio, partially as an offshoot of this. So it's hard to completely quantify exactly what the impact of all of this is. Tim Allen is an established star. Tom Hanks is an established star. I don't think anybody got additional name recognition. They got a lot more money, but they were pretty well into their careers and kind of in the middle of this great run, which is furthering who they were as individual actors and professionals during this space. I think I'm going to still go with a 5 because you had a special honorary Oscar at the time. The critical reviews were outstanding. You had a successful movie that was beyond even Pixar's and Disney's wildest expectations, that basically proved the concept of digital animation and pushed for DreamWorks to eventually become an offshoot that would do Shrek and How to Train Your Dragon and several other major properties. So I'll stay with a 5 on that side of it. But from an audience perspective, while it was a fairly large movie, I still don't think its full impact was completely felt right away. I have a 4 on that. I'm going to go with a 9.
All right. Impact and significance. Industry. I do believe it altered the course. It forced Disney to have to buy Pixar and take control of it. Ultimately, I think it was within that 5 years, or pretty darn close.
Days, it says. I am looking at it right here, a Google thing that says Steve Jobs, recognizing the potential of Pixar, took the company public days after releasing the film.
Yeah, but taking the company public and then being a subsidiary of Disney are two different things.
Well, yeah, but he did.
The studio became an IP, but they became part of a larger entity of Disney, or absorbed by Disney, bought out, I want to say, right after Toy Story 2. So it'd be like right close to that barrier, about 2000, 2001, where you could say that they were bought by Disney. But the deal was started to be done well before that. So I'll give you some credit or some leeway on it.
Pixar was officially bought by Disney in May of 2006.
Oh boy, that was much later than I thought.
It was acquired in January, but officially in May of 2006.
And there was a lot of talk about it, and I think they were trying to do it, and it didn't get done. And there was an actual period where they were separated, and they were going to go off on their own. And then Disney had to really come up with a bigger offer. But neither here nor there. I think it opened the door. It didn't just open the door, it threw the door open for digital animation and the direction and style of what Pixar was doing. Because after that, we have a wide range of others that were doing similar stuff. And you mentioned Shrek being one of them. Jeffrey Katzenberg going off from Disney and starting DreamWorks with Spielberg and David Griffin. It's the same style. So as far as the public goes, I was an adult. You were children. This was revolutionary. I had never seen the level of talk about an animated film that Toy Story had. Woody and Buzz were all the buzz at that time, and they were rock stars at that moment in time. Parents, children, everybody was talking about Woody and Buzz. And they held a very high place in pop culture at the moment. And I had never seen that before in a animated, let alone, or for that matter, even in some aspect, film in general. The same level of, I'm trying to remember, characters that were ultimately bigger than life.
See, the only reason that I discount it just ever so slightly among the audience's perception is that it's hard for me to see that and recognize that argument comparatively to a lot of the other animated films of the time. So this is a year after Lion King that was huge. And Beauty and the Beast was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. That was huge. Little Mermaid, Aladdin, these are all within like a 4 or 5 year period preceding this. And those are some fairly large characters that were like, had the merchandising, they had the Disney brand behind it. They were significant for my age group, especially Lion King. I remember being enormous.
I understand perfectly what you're saying. But what I'm saying is when a film character becomes a central piece of pop culture, I think ultimately, in looking back on it and thinking about it, that's what made Rocky the Best Picture nominee. It wasn't necessarily the film, but Rocky became such an icon within pop culture that it traversed just the quality or the nature of the film. And I'm trying to think of other characters that were, to some extent, Forrest Gump was like that, where people talked about Gumpisms and such.
Rain Man, probably the same.
Yes. Well, and for that matter, one of the reasons why The Natural is so popular is the Roy Hobbs character spoke to a generation as an influential baseball player. There's just certain characters that became bigger than life and people talked about. There were jokes made about them. There were spoofs made about them on comedy shows and such. And the same thing was done with these two. It was bigger than the movie. So I had a 5 for the public as well. So I'm at a 10.
Okay, I'm going to go with easier numbers this time. And I'm going to say 5 again for the first part and 5 for the second part. I mean, so I did Google Dad's statistics from earlier about how much it made, and he was correct. I found 2 different sources that say it was the highest earning movie of 1995. Both ABC News and the National CIO Review say that. So that's the audience. And then within 5 years, it had spawned a sequel. And by 2000, over 50% of movies that were animated were using CGI technology that had been inspired by Toy Story, as well as video games and other platforms were now starting to put CGI in across multiple different platform types, all because of what was launched.
So I believe you're looking at the domestic totals where it probably would have been number 1.
It says worldwide. I'm looking right here.
The worldwide box office, which is officially released by Box Office Mojo, has 7 as 327 million worldwide to Toy Story's 244.
According to ABC News, it says that it made $373 million worldwide in 1995.
I don't know. I'm looking at the supposed official numbers.
Maybe it's Hollywood math.
My guess is that Toy Story's full run, because it came out near the end of the year, is that, but that incorporates going into 1996, since this was in November. And movies had a longer theater run at that time.
But, well, then you also have to take into account all the product placement. And so, like, you had all the toys that were coming off of it and all the things that, like, the Toy Story did a really good job of selling products for itself. So then that also made a huge amount of money for them. But that also inspired more of that type of thing as well. Like, people really aiming to sell products from there. So, I don't know. I think it had a big influence.
I'm not saying it didn't have a big influence, but did it have, like, worthy of a 10 where it was a complete marker? I mean...
It changed everything in animated films.
All right, I'll come up to a 9.5. So we'll go to a 9.83 instead of a 9.67. Happy?
Yes.
All right. Let's go to Novelty then. Novelty is the measurement of the originality of basically anything to do with the movie. In that capacity, I think we're going to be probably pretty high. And then the execution level on that originality, or just as a film in its entirety. Before we kind of wade too far into this, does anybody have anything other than a 5 for originality? Because I think it would be pretty hard to argue against that.
No, especially since we've all been saying it for the last hour.
Right. But I think also the writing, the character structure, the rest of it, being kind of in that space and being the first one as a screenplay to be an original screenplay, I think is significant in and amongst itself. And as far as execution, when you're talking about going into this digital animation space and doing it so well that it becomes the dominant force of what is now thought of as animation, when you're talking about the characters being so ubiquitous and universal, and the characters not only drawn well on the screenplay, but also coming to life from the voices, the casting that is foretold in this. Even the musical song, I think, is fairly well known and pervasive within pop culture. So I think I have a full 10.
Same.
I don't.
Okay.
I have a 5 for originality, as we've indicated. But actually, I thought the story overall was relatively weak. There wasn't anything that was real and original about it, other than the sheer concept of feeling inadequate, jealousy, etc. That I gave it some points up for. But the stories, the chase, the lost toys, all of that just seemed like a vehicle to see them interact, and it wasn't anything real original or very revolutionary. I was in retrospect, I thought more of the story originally than when I watched it again now. So I have a 4 for the execution. I think it could have done more with the story or with the concepts, and they didn't. They went with a very logical, clear, safe execution of the storyline. And so I'm at a 9.
When you look at just the storyline, yes, but the fact that they did something like making toys come to life and have whole backstories, it's not just about the kids playing with the toys. That is original. That is new. That is like, these toys are animate objects. Like, that whole concept was very novel and new.
And I gave it a 5 for originality.
Having things that were not necessarily people is not necessarily new.
No,
I mean,
but
Disney had been doing animals
and like that kind of thing, but toys are completely inanimate objects.
Mrs. Potts.
Okay, but she was a person who had been turned into a pot.
Ah.
Have you not watched Beauty and the Beast?
Yes, I've seen Beauty and the Beast.
Okay, it is a huge distinction then. I know, and that's one of my favorite memories, but
it's a distinction without a difference.
It's a huge distinction because she's an actual person that's just in the shape of a pot, just like in Harry Potter or any other magical thing. You can take the shape of something that doesn't make you not a person.
It's a distinction without a difference. It's a distinction based on the storyline, but the difference is not really there because an inanimate object is still a personification of somebody human being. That's why all the primary characters have to do with like people. Buzz Lightyear is technically a person, but he's just a toy. Or Woody is a person, but he's a toy.
It's completely different.
Mr. Potato Head.
Okay.
Mr. Potato Head is a potato.
Anyway, so that we can get somebody to bed on time, we have a 9.67 average between the three of us.
Yes, I am getting sleepy.
Classicness. This is kind of an amorphous category that we're not sure how to take all of it. I think relevant potential factors for this one, it is past the 25-year mark at where I start awarding points potentially up for timelessness. You can potentially take points off if there are any negative things that might not have aged well in this. Animation is a possibility that you can age up or down for it. Musical score, comedy is often one we've taken to or from points. We normally start at our baseline of 6 and we work up or down from there. Dad, we usually let you lead this category. Go ahead.
The animation is good. It holds up fairly well, but not exceptionally well. The story, as I indicated, I think was a little thin at times, so I don't know if it holds up with the level of complexity that oftentimes expected a more recent animated films or in films in general. But for the most part, did anybody else really, other than Bo Peep, this is a very dude-friendly film.
Yeah.
Yeah, they add Jessie and they add Mrs. Potato Head in the second one.
Yeah. So, I think it was a little too boy-friendly. It didn't speak to the girls in the audience as much.
But I think that's one of the things that girls like about it, though, is that it's not as girly for those that don't want to be all that girly.
But I think even then, you don't have to be the prissy girl, but at least to have characters that girls can relate to. So I can't give it any higher than this. So I went with an 8.
All right, I have one particular point to pick on that I have to ask our guest a question, just simply because my interactions with children at this point in time are fairly minimal.
Limited?
With good reason. Allyson, how often are kids still playing with toys?
I would say under the age of 8, every day, a lot. Under the age of 5, almost all day still. That's one of the big things that they are doing in schools, is pushing for how play teaches better than worksheets and structured lessons, but structured play. And so it's a huge part of still learning under the age of 8. It's a big part of child development.
Okay, just because a lot of the kids that I've noticed are often on iPads or phones that they're given to by their parents.
Well, yes.
And so I think some of that is a little bit stunted comparative to when I was growing up and I had tons of Fisher-Price characters and sets and all sorts of things that were constantly bought for me. My Lincoln Logs, my Army Men, etc., that are very much of what this film is about and detailing. But I just don't know to the level of which kids are still having that many toys and truly playing or being in that environment of creativity so much as we're going to sit you in front of a TV all the time or some version of a screen.
I hate to say it, it depends on your socioeconomic class. Unfortunately, that's the case. The lower socioeconomic class, the less toys you're going to have, the more screen time you're going to give them. The higher up is where you're going to start to see it more limited. You're going to see only maybe when they're out in public, or only at certain, they'll have maybe an hour a day, and they'll have a house full of toys. But it's really going to be dependent. I mean, there is definitely going to be the outliers, but you're going to see that more along the socioeconomic lines. In schools, you'll find toys and not a lot of screens until they get above the age of 8, especially in preschools and kindergarten.
So while I wouldn't necessarily hold this considerably against the film, I do think the concept of toys and toys coming to life and that universality at one time that you would have thought was there, I'm not sure is quite as prevalent as it once was. That being said, the animation is a bit dated. I agree with you on that point. The only other thing I would throw in here is that it does have at least a possibility of going a full point up on the timelessness. And I pretty much agree with Dad that an 8 is probably warranted at this point for Toy Story.
I'm going to say that, I mean, the animation is dated, but it's not to the point where you can't watch it. There's certain animations that are just so bad that you really struggle to watch them.
Any PlayStation 2 game looks terrible compared to where it's at now.
Yeah. It's still, I could easily still watch that and have no problem watching Toy Story. It's smooth, it's still good. But I also think that the jokes do hold up. There's no really insulting areas where certain movies that Disney's had to change certain concepts or things as they've remade them or had to put warnings. There's none of that in there. It's still very family friendly. It's good for all ages, all people. I do think that it has the fact that there's been so many sequels over time has also benefited it, because our generation is the one who watched it, and now we have kids, and so like our generation is starting to show those movies, and that's going to keep bringing it back and bringing that towards the front again and again as they keep doing that. So I think that's helpful, and I also think the fact that Disney has a huge like role in that, and they make it a big part of their parks in Disney World is also helpful, because when you go, you get to see all of these things come to life for real, and I think that also helps. I would probably go more like an 8.5 just because I see a lot of that kind of thing coming out.
And you just want to make me do more complicated math.
Well, there is that.
It's an 8.17 average between the three of us. Rewatchability. This is kind of a make-it-as-you-go test. We have had so many different subjective tests on this category to whomever wants to go. Allyson, I will let you lead as the guest.
I mean, I could probably watch it once a year without too much issue. I wouldn't say that, like, I would watch it in order to get to the other ones. Like, I'm not the kind of person who could start at 2 or 3. I'd have to watch 1 to get there. But people like my husband are coming up to me and saying, I just recently watched that within the last couple of years. I'm not going to watch it again. Like, I need to wait. And I had a teenager living in my house last year, and she was like, oh, I saw that once. I'm good for now. I'll watch it again, at some point. Like, so just seeing from the different points, I would say it's rewatchable, but like you have to like be in the right mood or like frame for it. I would give it like a 7.5. We're gonna say 7.5 because it is definitely rewatchable, and you are seeing it with your family still, and people are rewatching it with their kids now, and so it's coming back up, but it's not necessarily going to be the movie that you're going to pull out all the time and watch.
Seeing this every 3-4 years is about right. I don't need to see it more often than that. It's just not that important to me. If it's on and I'm flipping through stations, yeah, I'll probably leave it on for a bit, especially since I've just happened to see it again. But there's a reason why I haven't seen it again probably in 15, 20 years. It's just not, it doesn't make that big a difference to me. So I'm at a 6 simply because it's something that I will rewatch in the right time frame. I'm hoping at some point in time to maybe have little people in my life again so that I can sit and watch this with them, but we'll see. If not, whatever. So I'm at a 6.
So as I've done recently over the past couple of months, I'm trying to take it from a more objective level as opposed to a subjective level, because I think this movie, more than most that we've covered recently, probably lends itself to that. There are not going to be a lot of situations where I'm going to turn on many animated films by choice. It's just not my thing that I necessarily gravitate toward. However, there's nothing really objectionable about the film. It's really short. It's like 84 minutes. So you can pretty much whiz right through this in one sitting without much problem. It is by far the shortest Pixar film that there is.
If you had a lot of water, you could really whiz through it.
Anyway, so I think that it's engaging. It's short enough that for anybody with a bad attention span, it keeps you kind of engaged on that front of it. It is very funny. I was laughing along with this, and I guess I didn't expect myself to still think that this was fairly funny, but they have very good engaging characters that are easy to follow along with. I do think the story is more than just a little bit simplistic, but because of its simplicity, it's also got some universality to it, and a lot of the themes are stuff that people are often dealing with. New people coming into their community, whether that's at work or their social group or anything else, and slowly pushing you out. So there are things here that I think are a little bit above the average. So from that standpoint, I have an 8. And I guess I'm the high person on that one for some reason. But that puts us at a 7.17 average between the three of us for rewatchability. For audience score on this one, we had an 85% for Google users and a 92% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us an 8.85. So to repeat the categories, we have a 9.67 for Legacy, a 9.83 for Impact and Significance, a 9.67 for Novelty, an 8.17 for Classicness, a 7.17 for Rewatchability, and an 8.85 for audience score, giving us a final total of 53.36, and currently tying it on our list with The Godfather Part 2 for number 14.
Wow.
You are not going to see on any other list that Toy Story and The Godfather Part 2 will be tied. I guarantee that.
Yeah.
That's why we're better.
Yes.
Any reaction, Allison?
I've only seen Godfather Part 2 once, and I don't remember it. So I'm not of much help with that. I like Toy Story, and I don't know, I like animated movies. I think they're fun and whimsical, and
I think it would be the ultimate height of tiebreakers to break The Godfather Part 2 versus Toy Story.
Should we see if we could get
Andrew to do this with us? I'm not sure he's the right person to do Godfather Part 2 versus Toy Story, but I know there is somebody out there that would be very animated, pun intended, about The Godfather Part 2 being even in the same conversation of a greatest movies list with Toy Story.
okay, but you can't pick somebody who's going to be against Toy Story either. You got to find somebody who can be
I didn't
objective.
say that. I didn't say that. And frankly, we've never had a guest on for any of our tiebreakers so far. So that would be interesting.
Who are you thinking? Dad wants to know.
I don't know if I have any particular person in mind. So, for what it's worth, High Noon is just ahead of The Godfather Part 2, and The Sound of Music and Schindler's List are just behind Toy Story and The Godfather Part 2.
Both good movies.
Very much so.
Yes.
So, let the complaints roll in. If you want to write us about Toy Story tying The Godfather Part 2, you can write us at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on any of our socials at Gmote Podcast on Twitter, Letterboxd, YouTube, Instagram. We don't have a Blue Sky yet, but you can write at Gmote Podcast on Blue Sky. We just won't receive it yet. Any of those is feasible.
What is Blue Sky?
It's basically the new liberal version of Twitter.
Yes, it's much better.
I think I'll avoid it just like I do Twitter.
That's perfectly fine.
I will say that both Toy Story and Godfather Part 2 are stories of struggle for power.
Fair point. Or you can contact us at the website RonnieDuncanStudios.com, and you can find any of our stuff or our content there to also decry if you so choose. Oh, I forgot. We're also on TikTok. You can definitely seek us out on TikTok.
True.
Remaining questions for this one. If people can hear the toys talking, how are the army men reporting back without raising alarm for Andy and his mom?
Where is Andy's dad? I tried to Google it, and the answers made no sense. I need to know where his dad is.
It's a single mom.
Obviously, but where is Dad?
Why is it important?
Because I need to know.
Inquiring minds?
Now,
I don't know.
I wonder, would Andy have had so many male toys because he was looking for a replacement father figure?
His dad can't have been gone that long because his sister's a baby. She's not even a year old yet. So Dad can't have been gone very long.
Maybe they just weren't good at drawing dads yet.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, you barely get a look at his mom. So.
Maybe his dad is different than his sister's dad. And this is really progressive.
Or maybe Dad is in the military.
Yeah, see, I tried to Google it, and some people, the most common held belief is that the dad died of some sort of polio, like late polio complication after having polio as a child, and on his deathbed he gave Andy Woody. And I just don't buy that.
Okay, those are the people that voted for RFK Jr.
I don't know. Like, a ton of people have this. Like, I Googled and Googled, and like, it's all over. And I'm like, I don't believe that at all. There was a small portion that said the parents were divorced. And I mean, like, it was like maybe twice.
That's stretching it.
It was awful. Like, some of this, like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
We do know that Woody was handed down because Woody is an old toy. So we do know that. So, but where did Woody come from then? We don't know.
I have 3 more questions to get to. How slow is the moving truck going if a fireworks rocket and an RC car can catch it?
I was anticipating that RC car must have had like super speed or something. Like he hit that turbo boost and they were flying, and I was like, "Wow, that is."
I mean, it's
impressive.
a residential neighborhood, so it's probably easy to guess. It's like 25 miles an hour. I don't think the moving truck is going any slower than that. Normally, a truck, even in a residential, is probably doing 30. But let's just give it the benefit of the doubt.
They were stoplights.
Fair, but even then, I mean,
I know. I found that one a little unbelievable
it's an
too.
Animated film.
That's true. It's still more believable than the ending of the airport thing at the end of like Fast and Furious 6 or whatever it is. But anyway,
Never seen it.
Of course you haven't. What is Woody made of that he can get smashed by a toolbox and have zero issues?
That toy is thrown around. He is handed down from generation to generation. He has done all these things. He is thrown out windows. He's left out of the car. And he's still in perfect condition. But Buzz loses an arm. Like,
hard plastic, possibly some sort of vulcanized rubber like a hockey puck.
Well, I mean, obviously his body is like stuffing. But the boots, like, how do they not come off? And how does his face or his head not get smashed?
I mean, and if you go to number 2, his boots do come off. Because he takes his boots off to clean them. Also, how has a child never lost his boots? Like, I'm sorry, like, anyone who's been with kids knows they lose every accessory. So, and how does his string still work after multiple generations as well? And the voice box sounds just as good. And no child has broken that? Has no one ever had a child play with a toy before? They will break that within days. Or the parent will, because they'll get tired of the child pulling on it. Toys that make noise are the enemy.
So you don't like the squeaker penguin or whatever it is?
Squeaky, I love him. I have a pop version of him. Oh, Wheezy. Wheezy's his name.
That's right.
He's so cute.
Who almost was in this film.
But if you ever give if I ever have a child and you give him a noise-making toy, it's just like, you're done. Like, no. You don't give a child, a family, a toy that makes noise if you actually like the person. You only do that for the people you hate.
That's not true.
I'm giving out drum sets.
People you also want to torture. That's why I would give your children violent video games.
I want
recorders.
the future versions of Phil Collins and Don Henley, in the family.
Unfortunately, my husband was in percussion, so he'd probably find that very fun.
Yeah.
So along your similar question, wouldn't Buzz have broken more than just his arm falling that far?
Yeah. No scratches, no anything.
The wings didn't break off?
How about when he fell out the window, too? Nothing happened at all when he fell out the window from a second story.
Landed in the bush.
Then he should have some scratches or some paint, something.
They didn't have that level of detail
it's
yet.
It's an animated film.
All right. Any other remaining questions?
No.
I do have one, which is the more relevant. Why is it that we have to continually portray Mr. Potato Head as being a plastic piece? Mr. Potato Head was supposed to be with a potato. That's what I had when I was a child. Just the accessories that went on a potato.
Then they realized that the potato would rot, and then they were finding probably rotten potatoes in the back of kids' closets. So they made it plastic.
I used to love to watch my grandma and grandpa fight over the fact that grandpa kept getting out a potato. And grandma would complain about how we're wasting food.
The original plastic potato head came out in 1964 due to safety concerns and complaints about rotting vegetables.
There it is.
I had a Mr. Potato Head with a potato, and I remember Grandpa Ralph getting out the potato and Grandma Dorothy being upset that he was wasting food. So
he was originally launched with what you're talking about in 1952, followed by Mrs. Potato Head in 1953, Brother Spud, and Sister Yam.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank our guest for being on with us this evening, despite her proclivities and difficulties. I do not have you listed as being back with us yet this season. This is your only appearance for the year. But is there anything you'd like to promote or tell people where they can find you or anything online?
Not currently. No, I kind of keep off of all that. I'm working on a few projects that I'm hoping to launch for my historical stuff this summer. Keep an eye out for some of that. And I've been working on making videos and podcasts of like how for people like me who don't know how to sew yet or what to garden or how to get into reenacting and like starting some of that.
So be on the lookout for that on her YouTube channel or whatever's upcoming when she ever decides that's going to be a part of it.
When I have enough. I want to have enough to launch something and not have to panic. So.
Okay. Dad, any remaining thoughts for the week?
Just briefly, a remaining thought is I'm just kind of going back through in my lunch hour and trying to find stuff that that takes me back to my younger days or childhood and just enjoying some things. I found a special that Bob Newhart did in the early 90s, and I always loved Bob Newhart as a child, so I was watching that today. So that's kind of what my little pet project is, finding stuff that I find interesting that brings me back for little moments in time. So,
all right. As for me, I had a free movie ticket from Marcus Theaters for their anniversary. They ran some sort of promotion with their membership club, which I happen to be a part of. And so I took myself to see Black Bag before I left Madison last weekend. And I'm not nearly as effusive as a lot of people on the internet who apparently are just like good film starved. But it is a fun Steven Soderbergh film. I didn't catch all of the conversations, which I think it lends itself to repeat viewings due to the nature of I have to watch everything with subtitles anymore because I just have a hard time picking out things with such usually bad sound mixing and how fast some of the dialogue was going with some very heavy English accents. So that being said, I think it will be an easy cable rewatchable movie in that regard, and I think more repeat viewings will probably actually make me enjoy it more. But I would say it's a solid 8 out of 10.
You guys gonna go see the new Snow White?
No.
Not likely.
I like Rachel Zegler, but no.
I was thinking about it. On a Tuesday night when it's $5 movie night.
You do that, Allyson. All the power to you.
There's not much out right now.
Black Bag. But anyway, I digress. That'll do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. Rommel, you magnificent bastard! I read your book! Next week for our 255th episode, we welcome our newest 5-time club member, Sarah Shea of Shea Cinema, back to discuss one of Dana's personal favorite films and the Best Picture winner of 1970 with Patton. Directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, written by Francis Ford Coppola and Edmund H. North. Cinematography by Fred Konekamp. Music by Jerry Goldsmith, starring George C. Scott, Carl Malden, and Edward Binns. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at thenewRonnieDickensStudios.com or at greatestaltimemopodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle @GMOPodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Dickens Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.